is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. Our God is awesome. He reigns from heaven with wisdom, power, and wisdom. Our God is an awesome God.
Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, love. Our God is an awesome God. Now when he rolled up the
Have you all
sleeves.
here this morning? Just two announcements I must add. Brother Jack reminded me when he mentioned Athlone. So Ryan and Philippa are representing us. They're at the campaign at Athlone this morning. That's where they are this morning. And then this afternoon, Athlone is closing off their campaign, so they're having a sing-along this afternoon at 3. So please join us, join Athlone, and we have the sing-along this afternoon at 3 at Athlone. That's wrapping up their campaign. Right. The topic today is be reconciled to God by representing Christ. So, peace unto you, peace be to you, 3 John verse 15. I'm sure we've heard that many times. And the question I have for us is, how many of us are teaching and preaching simply peace? Understood as to keep the status quo, no matter where we are and whatever the situation is, whatever the conflict is, keep the status quo and not cause further conflict. Keep the peace. I can't think how much, so we know Trump is not a politician, and the kind of peace that he expects is the peace that favors American side, and he won't be giving any kind of peace that doesn't favor American advantage, whatever that might be. But who of us are teaching and preaching simply peace? Keep the status quo, don't cause further conflict. For many of us, to keep the peace and to not cause further conflict means to keep out of each other's way. That's how we keep peace. Just stay out of each other's way, that's how we keep peace. Or maybe more aggressively, we need to go our separate ways to keep the peace. To accept that you do what you need to do and I do what I need to do. That's how we're going to keep peace. You do what you want to do and what you need to do, and I'll do what I have to do to keep the peace. In order to maintain the peace, we build walls between ourselves. We possibly aim missiles at each other and threaten each other with a threat, as long as you don't interfere in my way of life, I will not interfere in your way of life. And so they call it peace. Peace can easily be achieved simply by keeping distance from one another. Such a simple thing, really, to keep the peace. Keep a distance between you and stop escalating further hostilities at each other, threaten each other with words, but you can keep the peace. Another one that we might be saying is, forgive one another. Ephesians chapter 4 verse 32. How many of us teach and preach simply forgiveness? Understood as letting go of the resentment, the bitterness, the pain, and maybe the desire to take vengeance, get revenge against the person who hurt you. That's forgiveness. So you let go of the resentment, the bitterness, the pain, forgive. Give up any vengeance you might feel against that person who hurt you. Forgiveness is much harder than peace, as you now need to give something up. The other person need not do anything. They can be at war, they can be whatever they do, they just, going to keep their own way. But you, if you need to give forgiveness or exercise forgiveness, you need to do something more than just peace. They can still have resentment, they can still have anger, they can still have mistrust against you. But to show true forgiveness means to forget and never hold that pain caused against that person against them. So whatever pain they've caused against you, true forgiveness means you can never hold that against them again. That's really hard. It is only something you have to do. It is only something you have to do. It's not something that's both ways when forgiveness happens. Only you need to do your part. So it's only something you have to do. So true forgiveness is not dependent on what the other person does. You can forgive. And it is on you and for me to achieve that. The next one is, be reconciled to God. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 20. Now how many of us teach and preach a ministry of reconciliation? It is understood as restoring harmony, rebuilding a broken bond, re-establishing trust between each other, and changing behavior toward each other. Reconciliation is even harder than just peace, than just forgiveness, as you cannot just go your separate ways. You cannot keep distant from each other. What is reconciliation? It is restoring harmony, rebuilding a broken bond, re-establishing trust between each other again, and changing your behavior towards each other. Because whatever we did before caused conflict. So something needs to change to either mend that conflict or be able to work through that conflict doesn't flare up again. You cannot now just give an apology and forgive. But both of you must actively change attitude to rebuild the relationship, to stop the hostility between you, and to have that same trust, that same brotherly love for one another before the hostility began. For fighting or for separated couples, a really nice analogy, to be to each other like you were on your wedding day. For those of us who got married, if you can remember your wedding day, man, that was a special day. There was no fighting amongst us. There was no hostility. There was no disappointment. There was no... it was such a special day. You need to return to that same day. If you're a couple, if you're married, that's the kind of reconciliation God requires from us. On that day, you wanted nothing more than to be with each other. Nothing more. You wanted to be with each other. Peace, we separate, we part ways, you do your thing. That's not giving up everything and being with each other. Wanting nothing more than to be with each other. And on that day, you were willing to give your whole self over. You see, you can stand uncovered, vulnerable, and in each other and in need of each other on that day. You preferred to walk together, a path together, than walking a path alone on that day. To be reconciled to God means God had a special bond with man, where there was no hostility between them. Man loved and obeyed God. submitting to his commands and requirements. God in turn loved man, providing for him, securing him, establishing him in order that he may be successful. However, sin separated us, causing hostility between us and God. God wanted us to love him, obey him, as it would always be in our best interests, in everyone else's best interests. So if we loved God, we would get along with our neighbors. If we did everything that God required of us, we would not be in conflict with one another. However, we knew better. Wanting to do our own thing, we rejected God. We rejected his obedience. We chose to walk our own lonely path, which always leads to destruction. God condemned us for it, having wrath over our wickedness and contempt, and willing to cast us out as a result. Huge conflict between God and man. Man would convince himself that he is at peace with God by just keeping out of each other's way. We assume we have peace with God. We build up a wall. Lord, I'm going to do this thing, and while you go and do your thing over there. We aim missiles at each other, and we call it peace. Maybe we ask for forgiveness. Maybe we forget the hurt we have been experiencing, being separated from God. Maybe God forgives us and forgets the hurt that he has experienced due to our wickedness and our disobedience. But we don't change attitude. We don't put an effort in to be reconciled back to God, to restore back the love we had like it was on our wedding day, when God added us to his kingdom, to his church. You see, we'll forgive, but we won't forget. We'll continue in the life we live and the way we think things should be for ourselves, but we won't make changes. We forget that special day to be reconciled. The day when we were completely restored and reconciled back to God, having no hostility toward each other and trusting each other to walk a journey together. Trusting each other to walk a journey. You see, brethren, if you're not baptized, you're not in the church. If you're not in the church, you are not in right standing with God. And you choose this day to walk a separate, lonely path away from God. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 17 to 19 reads, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation, a special person. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." Verse 19, that is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against him, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Paul teaches something remarkable here, brethren, that through Christ God no longer keeps records of man's trespasses. There is no longer any hostility. It is wiped out. It is blotted. You are standing righteous before God through Christ. That through Christ we have received complete forgiveness and complete peace with God. It's not good enough to just have peace. It's not just good enough to have forgiveness. But we now are reconciled to God. So there is a change in what we do and how we live, how we deal with one another, and what is required of us in God's church. And it's not just peace and forgiveness that we have received, but this reconciliation with God through Christ. Coming together, having repaired a broken bond, we have come together. We have come like our marriage day, renewed a broken bond, having complete faith, having complete trust in each other again, no matter where the road ahead leads us. That's a special bond that's been restored. One that was broken, one that was separated, but is now come together. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 20 to 21 reads, "Therefore, thus, as a result of this reconciliation that we have with God, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you, on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." This talks to the incredible sacrifice that Christ had to make in order for us to be reconciled. Now that we have been reconciled to each other, we represent everything that Christ stands and wants for us. He wants us to be ambassadors of him. Verse 21, for our sake, for our benefit, he made Christ responsible for our sin, for our trespass, who himself had no sin, wasn't deserving of it, but he took it upon himself alone, so that we could obtain that right standing with God. But since we have been reconciled, forgiven and made right from God, before God, how much more must we be reconciled with one another? Not just obtaining peace or providing forgiveness, but building a bond of trust and unity with one another, being reconciled to one another. You see, it's not just good enough that we live at peace with one another or forgiving one another. Christ went as far as what was required to take upon our sin, to be separated from God, who deserved it not, in order that we could be reconciled to God. Appreciate the gravity of what Christ did for us. How much more important is it for us to be reconciled with one another, to build that broken bond of trust? Brethren, we must teach and preach a ministry of reconciliation, and to reciprocate what God has done through Christ for us. Reconciliation is hard work. It is not something that comes easy. It is not just something you can do on your own either. It requires both parties to do more than just live peaceably or having just forgiven one another. It requires much more than that. Reconciliation requires both parties to forgive, both parties to re-establish a bond of trust, both parties to change attitude and behavior towards one another. I don't know if I could imagine the Americans, Trump and his administration, reaching that point of reconciliation with his enemies. Even the Canadians across the border are an enemy, cannot trust, fighting, cannot be reconciled. I can't imagine it, at least. But what is required is forgiving one another, re-establishing that bond of trust, changing attitude and behavior towards each other. It requires sacrifice to be made for one another. You see, Donald Trump's attitude is America first, and if I'm not going to gain or benefit from this relationship or this deal, well, there's not going to be any deal. Let's just keep fighting. But that is not God's way. That is not the way of the church. It requires sacrifice to be made for one another. It requires cooperation for one another, that both feel safe and sheltered when corresponding and trusting in each other again. It requires constant dialogue, constant commitment towards each other, constant attitude of building up rather than breaking each other down, accusing each other, pointing out the faults in each other. For those of us who are married or widowed, we need to remember how we were to our spouse on our wedding day. So if we're fighting, if we're in a disagreement with each other, even if we're boyfriend or girlfriend, trying to build a relationship, we need to remember how we were on our wedding day. Okay, that's not applicable to dating, but the principle being looking out for one another, giving up whatever is required for one another. So we must also be to one another here. For those of us not married but baptized, we need to remember how we were on the day when we were first baptized and how we were reconciled back to God. Not just simply at peace, not just simply forgiven, but much more than that. God forgot all our sins. He blotted it out. He brought us back, recognizing us perfect before Him. We were completely forgiven, completely free from all guilt or trespass or hostility toward God. So too, brethren, must we be reconciled to one another, completely forgiven, completely free from all guilt or hostility towards one another. Choosing to walk a path together rather than alone. We need to make a decision here. We need to make a choice to rather be together than to be alone. To protect and to defend each other, and to never hold our previous grievance against each other. This is really hard. Only then, when we both achieve this remarkable place of reconciliation towards each other, will we then come to understand fully what God has done for us. Let me repeat that. Only when we have both achieved this remarkable place, this place of reconciliation towards each other, will we then come to understand fully what God has done for us. To conclude, it is not I who is asking that we must be reconciled and to forgive one another, but rather God, who instructs and requires this from us. Matthew 5:15 says, "But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." Matthew 5:23. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother. Not be at peace with your brother, not go and forgive your brother. Be reconciled to your brother. Both parties. And then come and offer your gift. Mark chapter 11:25 says, "And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive your trespasses." We must forgive, brethren. This is not easy, and it takes a lot of work from both parties. not just the one side, needing to work together to give genuine forgiveness, peace and reconciliation, or unquestionable trust towards each other. For many of us, we think that being reconciled, it is not just something you can do on your own. Similar to how Christ did it between us and God. To achieve any kind of success will require that you both have a desire to be reconciled. Any kind of success, you need that desire to be reconciled. If either party doesn't have that desire, there's not going to be any success. You need to have no agenda, no list of demands. Until you have done all these things, only then can we be reconciled. There will be no success. You can have no agenda, no list of demands attached as to what you will get out of a newly reconciled relationship. But rather having a different attitude as to how much you are willing to sacrifice to the benefit and advantage of the other person. You need that attitude. How much am I willing to sacrifice for that friend, that brother, that wife, that husband, that family member? That is what is required in order for us to be reconciled. Because if they're doing the reciprocal, doing so much sacrifice for you, how much more will you do for them? Will you not do so much more for them? Brethren, this isn't something easy, and it's not to be taken lightly. However, it is when we achieve the state of mind that we can truly call ourselves ambassadors of Christ. The state of mind, this thinking, this attitude change of reconciliation, that we can truly call ourselves, now we are ambassadors of Christ. Now we truly appreciate what Christ did for us. Brethren, to wrap it up, let us all strive to be such ambassadors of Christ. Humble, forgiving, and forgetting past injustices. Being willing to sacrifice everything. And that's what Christ did. He sacrificed everything in order to be restored to one another. If there's anyone in need of prayer, let it be known as we stand now and sing the song of invitation. I thank thee.
Weary beyond the azure blue, a COC comes from human side. It is the sky where they play you, and friend the world with the great mind. There is a God, He is alive. You know, who speaks from His inspired word. There is a God, He is alive, He lives and He survives from the Son of God, created man. The great
was free. A life was willing there to give. That he from sin might set men free, and evermore with him go there. There is a God, he is alive, in whom I live, and we survive. From that song, created man, he's our God, the great I am.
Love one another, for love is of God. He who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is love. Love